Now I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Mark.
Okay. Elaine asked me, as you said earlier, to talk about the Model Y. And I suppose I am well positioned to talk about that. And I'm going to call it, as you see here, my adventures in Tesla land, or I have an alternate. So let me go into the reasons that I bought this car. And along the way, I'm going to explain how that all happened. And as part of that, I want to talk a little bit about how I got to the Model Y, because my automotive history, I'm a mechanical engineer, I was a gearhead, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of long and twisted. And believe it or not, it covers 82 years of car models. And that starts with the first car that I owned, which was a 1939 Chevrolet Master Deluxe Business Coupe. I bought it for $200, which is, that's what you pay now for the garage door opener for the Tesla. But I bought it. It didn't look like this when I bought it. I can tell you that. It did look like that by the time I got done with it, but that took a while. But since it wasn't a particularly reliable car, I decided to get a model that was 30 years newer, and I went with a 69 Rambler American. Did I mention I was a nerdy engineer? This ought to prove that fact quite clearly. And so I ended up selling the 39 to pay part of my way through college. And then in my last year or so of college, I bought another 1969, this time an Alfa Romeo. You can tell I'd gotten just a little bit cooler. After that, I went to work, and my first company car was a 1980 Monte Carlo. Just happened to be this color too. And that did pretty well. I bought it from the company later on and drove it for a while and then gave it to my dad. And I replaced it with a 1987 Buick Grand National, which was the fastest car that General Motors built in that year, including the Corvette. Now, it still doesn't come close to what the Model Y can do, but it was V6, turbocharged, intercooled, and mine was stolen here in San Diego. And so when it was stolen, I thought about, well, what car did I always want? And I found one, a 1971 Chevelle SS 454. Can you tell that I wasn't concerned about climate change yet? That car got all of 10 miles to the gallon if it was going down a greased hill with a tornado behind it. So that got a little old after a while. And it's amazing how crude these cars are from this time period. I, of course, didn't remember that because they were just cars when I was in high school. But now, compared to what we have, these things are really not very well made. So I did get smarter, and my next car was a 96 Saturn SL2. And that served us pretty well. And then that also went to my dad, who is obviously my recycling center for automobiles. And we replaced it with first a 2008 Prius, and then we got a 2010 Prius. So we're slowly moving up the food chain, if you want to call it that. And then after that, we made our first EV purchase, my wife and I, with a used 2011 Nissan Leaf. And so you can tell by now, I'm fully engaged in doing what I can to address climate change, at least in our personal lives. So the Leaf did a great job. It also taught me what range anxiety really could be, because this thing at that time had a range of about 60 miles, which I learned to work with, and therefore got over my range anxiety. But when the Chevy Bolt came out, I could not resist. And I got this thing, and I went from a 60-mile range to 235, and I felt like a dog that had been let off the leash. And it was wonderful. It was a great car. It was, it was a step up in many ways, not just range, over the Leaf. But then we still weren't done, and we decided to take the Prius that my wife still had, and I bought a 2018 Model 3, which was going to be my car until she started reading videos about how to drive it and decided, no, it was her car. So she ended up with that. So we're almost there. As you can see, we've gone through 13 cars so far. So here's the big question. Why did I make the leap from the Bolt to the Model Y? Let me go over the answers to that. Let's start with the little reasons. And by the way, this is our Model Y. So 36% more range with the Model Y than the Bolt. As anybody who's been driving electric vehicles for a long time knows, it isn't necessary to have this many miles range. Although when you drive long distance, it is quite handy. Okay, but I don't do that often, but it is handy. And I will come back to that in a moment. The other thing is Tesla provides over-the-air updates. It used to be every couple of weeks. It's maybe a little bit less than that now, but our cars continue to get better all the time. And Chevrolet also they touted over-the-air updates. I got one recall done over the air, and that was it in 3 years. So they were not following Tesla's model of giving us additional features as we were going along. Tesla has rear view mirrors that fold. That is, in our tight garage, that is really handy. Doesn't sound like much, but that extra few inches on either side of the car makes a big difference. Obviously, the Y has more interior space than the Bolt. And the value of this is we have friends that come visit us a couple times a year, and they bring enough luggage to stay a few months, although they're not staying anywhere near that long. And their luggage really just barely fit in the Bolt. It's no problem in the Model Y, which is handy. The other thing too is that Tesla has this premium service for music, news, radio, all this kind of stuff you can get. And Bolt, the Chevrolet offers it too. Chevrolet offers it through OnStar, but Tesla's service is $12 a month, and OnStar was something like $50. So big difference there. I never did get the OnStar service. And I do like using the phone instead of carrying a key fob. And you probably heard that doesn't always work, but it works really very well. It works probably 95% of the time for me. If it doesn't connect and allow you to unlock the car, then you have a card that you carry in your wallet that does the job. But very, very rarely has the Model Y been a problem for me. So let's talk about things that were good about both cars. Number one, hey, the obvious, right? And then I do like the upright seating position. The Model 3, a much sportier sedan, sits much lower. And after I had been driving the Y for quite a bit and got into my wife's 3, I had forgotten just how low that car is. Of course, that turns into getting much easier to get in and out, again, particularly in a tight garage. And of course, they share the maintenance advantage of electric vehicles. And we have 2 chargers in our garage. So the charging has always been very simple. In fact, when I sold the Bolt to a friend of mine and she very much loves the car, I just kept the same charger that I already had. And I took the converter, the little small plug that Tesla gives you with the car, plugged that onto the end of our charger, and that plugs into the Tesla and it works great. So that was a no cost switchover. Now, let's talk about why I really changed over to the Y. Number 1, Sentry mode. Some
Hey.
Chuck, that's you.
That was very much on cue.
Yeah, really. If you're not familiar with it, Tesla has cameras all around it. This was one of those over-the-air features that was given to us a few years back, that the car is continuously recording the video around it. And if something happens, if somebody gets close to the car or if somebody bumps the car, it saves that data. And you can pull it back up later and you can see it. And so, I get, when you get in the car, it will tell you there's been X number of Sentry mode events. And you can tap on it, you can pull it up, you can watch the whole thing. And I've never had anything serious happen to either of our cars, but I will tell you that the Model Y did catch a video of a guy publicly urinating next to my car. I deleted that one, but it was there at one point. You can call that useful if you want. The next thing is, between the Bolt and the Model Y, or just Tesla in general, is just the elegance of the cars. Yes, there's a difference in cost, of course, but I have to say, I really like the level of sound in the car, the sound system, plus how quiet the car is. You may know that the driver's window and the front passenger's window are now dual pane with a sheet of plastic in between them. And it's pretty incredible how much that little thing reduces the noise in the car. In fact, I took the Model Y up to Santa Barbara earlier this spring. There were 5 guys in the car, and one of them is a guy that has a Tesla Model 3. And as we're driving up from the back seat, he suddenly says, "Wow, this car is a lot quieter than mine." And we all realized that it is, and it's due to many, many things, but part of it are those dual pane windows. And that's just the kind of stuff I like. There's so much more. The rear view mirrors fold when you approach your house. They unfold when you leave. Lots and lots of little niceties like that. And then the supercharger network, to me, is the game changer between Tesla and everybody else. And I cannot imagine how much money Tesla has poured into that. It's incredible. In fact, just today, my wife and I were driving home in her Model 3, and on the navigation screen, now we were driving along I-5 north of 8, and on the navigation screen, it showed there were, I counted it, 7 supercharger stations between there and 52 highway. 7 of them. And they just keep building out more and more all the time. Now, I made a trip to Kansas last fall, and that was in the Model 3 before we had the Model Y. And It was the easiest long distance trip I've ever taken. It took me 2.5 days because I'm 60 some. I'm not going to drive ridiculous teenage hours. I'm going to do about 8 hours a day and then I'm good. So my wife was at home, and each day as I was driving, I would say to her, I think I'm going to go to here, this town, and I'm going to spend the night. And I spent 4 nights, 2 out, 2 back, staying in hotels. In 3 of the 4 nights, the supercharger station was in the hotel parking lot. In the 4th night, it was across the street. That makes for a wonderful, easy trip across country, because I would pull in, plug the car in, go into the front desk, get a room, come back out, unload my stuff, go up to the room, put it away, come back down. By that time, the car was usually about ready to go. And I'd take it to dinner, come back, park somewhere else. It was beautiful. Another thing that I would say about that is a friend of mine had the Chevrolet Bolt, which I had advised him to buy a few years back. He made a trip to Santa Barbara about the same time I did. I didn't know that, in his Bolt. I got with him when he returned and we compared notes. He'd had a lot of hassles getting the car charged up, the Bolt. In one place, somebody had unplugged him while he was away. And he comes back, he's not plugged in, he's waited an hour, and the car hardly had any more juice in it than when he left because they'd pulled it out. The nice thing about Tesla is you can't pull them out. Maybe the Hulk could, but I'm certainly not going to pull them out. And when he got back, he told me, I'm going to sell my Bolt. I'm going to get a Model Y. And he's since done that. That's what the supercharger does for you. Now, another piece, autopilot. Again, that trip to Kansas and back, the Model 3 did 95% of the driving, really reduced the mental overhead required to drive along the highway, which we all know is not the most exciting thing you can do in your day. And that thing did a great job. And finally, the last piece, and this is really the one that I switched for, full self-drive. As I said, I'm in my 60s, and there's going to come a time when I should not be driving. As far as I know, that could be in the next couple of months. And I'm really hoping that Tesla is going to have full self-drive one day, so that when it gets to the point that I shouldn't be driving, the car can do it for me. So that takes us finally to the last slide. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to go over, yeah. So the basic stats. So this is the details about the Model Y itself. It is a small SUV, again, bigger than the Bolt. This is the economy that you can expect from it. And I've gotten at least that well for the driving that I've done. All these various odds and ends here. Cargo space. It's not a light car, but it does have a phenomenal crash rating, because Tesla really focuses on that. You may have heard that. And finally, the price. Now, so we've gone through all this. As I said, I've gone through 13 cars in my automotive career. And the question is this the last car for me? Well, it's a fool's errand to predict the future. I want to think this is it, but who knows? That's my hope, at least. And that's what I've got. Any questions?
Yeah. Hey, Mark, great images and great delivery. Fabulous presentation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, I want to, my wife and I also have a Y and a 3. Our 3 is from 2018. The Y is from 2020. Is it you or your wife now who primarily drives the Y?
I get the Y. Yes.
You get the Y. Okay. Yeah. My wife, she likes to ride up higher. That's why she prefers the Y. I find the three is a funner car to drive, just the way it handles.
Sure.
It's a lot more. The Y feels like even though it's a small SUV, it feels like an SUV,
Yeah.
and the three feels like a sports car, and so I enjoy driving it more. But the Y is a great car. We love it, just like you do, the cargo space and everything else. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic car.
I don't think I've ever been happier with a car. I mean, so yeah, a lot of things, like you say, come down to personal preferences and that kind of stuff. I like the seating position, but you're right. The sportiness is definitely reduced in the Y. Although I will say it's fast. You know, our Model 3 is a rear wheel drive long range, and it's quick, but the Model 3 is dual motor long range, and yeah, it's as fast as any time I ever want to go. That's for sure.
You know, it's interesting. The Y is going to overtake, if it hasn't already, the three in terms of sales. You know, Tesla does not. What they do is they combine the Y and the three sales figures when they do their quarterly reports, and without a doubt, because they're going to be making the Y in Shanghai, Fremont, in Austin, and Berlin, and the Y is going to be the not only the biggest Tesla in the world, but perhaps the world's best-selling car at some point when all that goes online. But it'd be interesting to see whether or not the Y has overtaken the three yet. Nobody knows.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it probably will, but it is doing really well. So I see a few comments here. John Eldon says he had a 73 Chevelle. Yeah, that was really bad. So the really great year was 1970. 71 was starting to fall off a cliff. 72, 73, 74, they hit rock bottom. So it was bad. Another question about the battery size with the Y. If I remember correctly, it's 75 kilowatt hours. John, can you confirm? Do you remember?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question for Mark before we move along?
There's one here. Paul Heisel asked about the legroom in the rear seat of the Y. As I mentioned, 5 guys took our Model Y up to Santa Barbara, and they were not. I mean, they were in the 5'8" to 6 foot category, no problem in the rear seat leg room. There's a lot of room back there. There's no hump, so it works out. It works out really well. And then when will the Y get the new batteries? We were talking about that a little bit earlier tonight. I think it's going to be in the next, within a year, everything I've heard, and that the Y, I believe, is going to be built in both Austin and Fremont.
All right, thanks.